I honestly don't know what to think at this point. At the terms of what I have witnessed that night a month ago, it's honestly given me a lot to think about the value of life and also just how invulnerable we human beings truly are. I am pretty sure you're wondering what I am even talking about, so I'll cut to the chase. My name is Terry, but I won't give up my last name for obvious reasons. I will, however, tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a 26-year-old and living with my parents due to their elderly age and needing someone to look after them. I'm also a big fan of Nickelodeon cartoons such as SpongeBob, The Loud House, Rugrats, and The Fairly Odd Parents. Out of all of them, The Fairly Odd Parents will always remain my favorite, since it was one cartoon I grew up watching. I had seen pretty much all the episodes up to season 10, including the live action films, which I absolutely hated. Anyone who is curious about the Fairly Odd Parents live action films will heavily be disappointed if you think it's anything like the cartoon. While the films are similar to the cartoon series, there is one factor that makes them different. Timmy Turner is an adult rather than a child. I won't go into the plot lines of the films, since it would take up a lot of my time, but we'll just say that that the cartoon version of the Fairly Odd Parents was far better than the films anyway. I'll get back to the matter at hand. I have been watching the Fairly Odd Parents since it aired in 2001, and then it finally ended in 2017. I was a bit crushed when Butch Hartman, the creator of Fairly Odd Parents, announced his YouTube channel on February 8th, 2018, that he had retired from Nickelodeon and the show had been canceled as a result. The reason was because he wanted to move on to other things and focus on his YouTube channel a lot of the time. Despite the show being canceled, I still remained a fan of the series and also a huge fan of Butch Hartman's YouTube channel. But now as I write this, I can tell you right now that I'll never be able to look at the Fairly Odd Parents the same way again after seeing what I saw one night. What did I even see that make me look at Fairly Odd Parents in a completely different way? Well, it started back in October of 2021. I was chatting with some friends of mine on Discord server dedicated to Fairly Odd Parents series under the username Terry the Fairy Boy. One of them mentioned that they were actually close friends with Butch Hartman himself, and told me that they had been speaking to him just on how much the fan of the show I was. My friend had shown me Hartman the fan art of various Fairly Odd Parents characters I had drawn in the past, as well as fan stories I had written, as well as a YouTube video I made about a certain character theory as well. When I asked my friend on why they were telling me this, they said, Hartman is interested in actually speaking with you about something. You know that you mentioned that theory about why Vicky never got officially caught for hurting Timmy by his parents? Well, Hartman told me that he actually has something for you regarding that. He didn't tell me what, since he wanted to be for your eyes only. Upon hearing this, I was actually intrigued and amazed that Butch Hartman himself took an interest in my dedication to the Fairly Odd Parents, and more intrigued on what he had to show me was apparently for my eyes only. I had told my friend that I'd be honored to see what Butch Hartman had to offer me. When I was informed that he would send me a friend request to me on Discord so that we could speak to each other about it, about 2 minutes later, Discord informed me that a friend request has been sent to me. I was checking on the pending friend requests section, and on Discord, I saw it was none other than Butch Hartman himself. I quickly accepted his friend request and was greeted by Hartman, who told me about he wanted to request a section and saw that there was none other than him, but to speak in voice chat of the section of the DM. He wanted to do that. I agreed without any problem and entered the voice chat, feeling honored to actually speak with the creator of the Fairly Odd Parents himself. Here's how the conversation went. Butch Hartman: Hey there, I take it as you're Terry? Me? Yep, that's me. I've been a huge fan of Fairly Odd Parents since 2001, and I'm a bit sad that the series ended. Butch Hartman: Understandable. The series was a lot of fun of making over the years, but as the saying goes, all good things must come to an end at some point. Me: Yeah, that's true. So I heard about you had something to show me regarding that fury I had on Vicky finally getting caught by Timmy's parents in the act of tormenting poor Timmy? Upon asking that question, Hartman's tone turned a bit, unsettled. He sounded as if he was deeply disturbed about something, but I didn't know what it was at first. But I did find out later on, and I honestly wish now I hadn't. If I hadn't known at the time that what I was about to get myself into, I would have just rejected Hartman's offer. At this time, though, I was eager for an answer. Hartman said, "Well, technically I did have a plan to have Vicky get exposed for her evil acts and past actions towards Timmy, but it never became a reality, actually. To put it more in simple words, the episode was never aired and never will. The plot idea was actually not even mine, to be honest." Hearing this made me feel a little bit more intrigued and interested. I asked him, "Really? You mean that episode was a lost episode? I've actually read a couple of those lost episode creepypastas myself, but they weren't really good, to be honest. They're full of cliches and written poorly." Hartman replied, "Yes, this was technically a lost episode, but it was nothing like the other lost episodes you read online. All the ones are usually written by people who have very little experience, but this one was far more one of those, and to be honest, I thought it was well written, as well as a depiction of a horrifying scenario that is known to sometimes happen in real life, although very rarely." "And what scenario could this be?" I asked, eager for an answer. "Well, I'm pretty sure you've heard about those real-life horror stories about people waking up during surgery and experiencing horrible psychological scarring pain. Well, this episode is actually depicted, but in a very accurate way. The only main difference is that in this lost episode, it was done intentionally," Hartman explained. This was a bit disturbing to hear, but I was curious as to where this was going. Yeah, I've actually heard stories about people waking up in surgery due to faulty medical machinery or mistakes being made on how sedatives to administer. They're usually very frightening and very disturbing in my opinion. Also, why are you bringing this topic up?" I had asked and responded back. Hartman said, "Well, this episode is because it was a lost episode that depicts a very real scenario, like I just mentioned. It was originally intended to be a Halloween episode that would air on October 31st of 2018, but since I had left Nickelodeon long before Halloween, due to the very graphic and disturbing nature of the episode, it was never aired. However, it was stored in the Nickelodeon vaults, and I was allowed to keep one copy of the unaired episode. No one's ever seen it besides me, and some of the cast in the Fairly OddParents cartoon. However, since you are dedicated to a fan of my channel and of the Fairly OddParents show, I thought I'd let you know to have a chance to view this episode for yourself, if you're interested." I felt a rush of excitement flew in my mind upon hearing this. I had always heard those stories about lost episodes before, even that real one lost episode of the wacky adventures of Ronald McDonald, but I had never thought I'd be able to experience a real lost episode in my life. As you can guess, I jumped the chance to see a real lost episode, despite the fact that it was clearly disturbing, one like the Hartman just explained. "Dude, are you kidding? I'd be honored to see it," I respond, excited voice. "I had a feeling you'd say that. I'll send you an MP4 video file of the episode and the plot to you in the DM here. Now, I do warn you right now that through this episode is not family friendly, like the others, and not to those with a weak stomach. As I mentioned before, it depicts a very graphic, psychologically disturbing elements of botched surgery and will contain content not suitable for kids. Also, like I said before, this episode's plot was not my idea. I just wanted to let you know in case you start having second thoughts," Hartman explained with a serious tone. "Don't worry, I've seen worse horror films than this, so I'm sure I'll take it," I replied confidently. "Well, alright then. I'll send you the file later after the call ends. Then when you check it out, you can also get a lot longer. It's also a lot longer than the usual episodes, so take your time viewing it," Hartman said. "No problem. It was an honor speaking with you, Hartman," I replied happily. "You too," Hartman responded. Then the call all ended. About 10 seconds after the call ended, An MP4 file with the plot description is attached to my Discord DM by Hartman. I took a look at the plot, and which had read as followed. Timmy Turner is visiting a hospital after the doctors discovered that his appendix needed to be removed after he was examined due to constant pain in his abdominal area. However, Vicky sneaks into the hospital, disguised as one of the hospital staff, to enact revenge on Timmy after being left stuck on the tar pit, only to be hit by a steamroller and seen in the episode Frenzy Mine. However, this plot revenge leaves Timmy scarred for life. The description about it got me worried. I was pretty sure that I was in for some weird, real dark stuff, but I had no idea how messed up this episode truly was at the time. If only I had known, I'd never watch it. I would have deleted it right away without second thought. After reading the description, I opened up the Windows Media Player and began to play the episode. After the opening was far different, however. Once the episode opened, a black screen appeared with a message that said, "Viewer discretion strongly advised for viewers under 14. Then it displayed the show rating. It was rated T14 for strong graphic imagery, mature themes, and another big difference was that there was no theme song, only the title card that showed up with the background image and the name of the episode. I grew a bit disturbed when I saw it. The background image was a real-life image of a man lying on the hospital bed with only his head facing down, with the breathing compartments attached to his mouth. The most disturbing part of this image was the man's eyes. They were wide open. There were also a chilling red color with pitch black irises. The image itself had a much darker hue to it, as well as giving it a frightened appearance, making the red eyes appear brighter than usual. I managed to take a screenshot of the image here. Before the title of the episode appeared, which was called Hospital Nightmare, there was also home to a brief background music with the title as well. The best I could describe it being is that something similar to that creepy Tomb of the Ancients theme from Rayman 2, The Great Escape, only much more sinister and surrounding in nature. Shortly after the title card vanished and the episode started, to give a better description of what was going on, I'll describe the episode in form of narration. I'm not too good at it, but I'll give it my best shot. Timmy Turner moaned in his hospital bed. He felt that his abdominal pain area there burned with it. It was 3 days since he had seen the doctor due to the growing stomach pains that he had experiencing for the last few days. The doctor had informed Timmy of his parents doing for thorough examination that his appendix was infected and would needed to be surgically removed quickly, or Timmy could end up in a serious spot of trouble. His parents stood near his hospital bed, talking about the surgical procedure that Timmy would go through, while his two fairy godparents, Cosmo and Wanda, stood near the pillow in the form of houseflies, trying to comfort him. This really hurts, Timmy moaned, rubbing his area where his appendix was. Don't worry, hon. Once the doctors get that infected appendix out of you, you'll feel much better, Wanda said. Yeah, good as new, Cosmo added. Yeah, but I'm a bit nervous about this, Timmy protested nervously. Before his parents could respond, Timmy's dad turned to face his bed. So, sport, you ready for this? He asked with a confident smile. I'm a bit nervous. Understandable. I was nervous too when I got my appendix removed, but I made it through though. If I could do it, so could you, Mr. Turner said. You had your appendix removed as well? Timmy asked curiously. Oh yeah, except it was much worse. I was 13 years old when my appendix nearly burst. Thank Lord my mother was able to rush me to the hospital on time, or I'd have suffered from a terrible fate, Mr. Turner explained. Dear, Miss Turner said with a scowl, let's not bring up the graphic details. Sorry, Mr. Turner apologized. Didn't mean to get too dark there, son. Oh, and there's someone else who wants to wish you luck as well, Timmy. Is it Trixie? Timmy asked with anticipation. Nope, Mr. Turner said, reaching for your door. It's your favorite babysitter. He opened the door to reveal none other than Timmy's worst enemy and biggest bully above Francis. It was Vicky. She was grinning evil grin like she always was, but quickly she put on a nicer persona at this moment she entered the room. Cosmo and Wanda glared at Vicky with their housefly forms, wondering why the brat teen was here to begin with. Ugh, not you, Timmy muttered under his breath as Vicky approached the hospital bed. Well. I heard that you were getting your appendix removed, so I decided to drop by and wish you luck, Vicky taunted in a way that shouldn't raise any suspicion in Timmy's parents, but Timmy wasn't fooled by her nice act. Yeah, right, Timmy muttered disdainfully. It's not like you ever cared about me. So why are you really here? Just to wish you luck, Vicky replied in a sing-song voice. Then she leaned forward next to Timmy's ear and spoke in a cold-hearted tone. And to remind you that I haven't forgotten of what you did to me that day, leaving me stuck in the tar pit only to get hit by the steamroller, and I called you out for help, but you just stood there and let it happen yourself. So you're gonna pay for that! That's also another reason why I'm here. Will you just leave me alone already? Timmy snapped, feeling another brief rush of pain ripping through his abdominal area. For now, twerp. For now, Vicky smirked. Then she stood back up and headed towards the door, before turning back to Timmy's parents, putting a nice persona again. I'll be seeing you again for his surgery is complete. Very well, Vicky. Take care, Miss Turner smiled. Vicky nodded with an innocent grin, then exited out of the hospital room and shut the door. Then her innocent grin turned that into a sinister one. Now to enact my revenge on that little twerp. He's gonna pay for putting me through that torture, Vicky sneered, heading down the hall. I've been preparing this for the last several days, and I'm not going to miss this chance to scar that little brat for life. Vicky continued down the hall until she came across a split hallway. The left hall that led to the ambulance parking garage stairway, and right at the hall led to the surgery room where Timmy would be having his operation done. Smirking evilly, Vicky headed down that right hallway, where she saw a pair of large double doors with a porthole window that was just about 10 feet ahead of her. There was a label on the next to the wall, the doors labeled Surgery Room Number 1 on it. The smaller metal door across the surgery room was another room labeled Locker Rooms, Staff Only. Vicky sneered in delight as she checked inside the surgery room to see that no one was there. Then she entered the locker rooms and found a bunch of spare nurses, doctors, surgeons, and janitors' uniforms hanging on a rack near the large set of lockers. Luckily, no one was in the room either, so Vicky didn't have to worry about getting caught. She selected a nurse's uniform and changed into it to disguise herself. Then she checked outside to see on the coast was clear. Once Vicky saw that no one was in sight, she slowly crept into the surgery room and attacked her revenge plan. Unknown to anyone, including Timmy, his parents, Cosmo, Wanda, and everyone else, Vicky had been trying to find a way to get back at Timmy ever since he had left her and her friends stranded in a pit of tar, just sitting on the lounge chair and grinning at her as the steamroller struck Vicky and her friends. Thankfully, none of them were fatally injured, but Vicky and her friends ended up in the hospital with a ton of broken bones and even needed surgery for most of it. All the while, she and her friends had watched Timmy and just grinned at them as the steamroller ran into them, injuring them severely. It was all the most humiliating and pain experience Vicky has ever gone through, and the fact that Timmy has been relishing this torment fueled her hatred for him and only further. She had always hated that little shitcorn, and no matter what Vicky did try to make his life miserable, he always seems to get over it. How he did it, Vicky doesn't know. But there were times in the past where she would have sworn that she even heard other people talking about him in his bedroom. Who were they? Vicky didn't even know, and she honestly didn't care. All Vicky cared about was getting her revenge on Timmy for refusing to help her and her friends out of the tar pit when they begged him for help. Of course, Vicky didn't even figure out how to get back at Timmy. She had used pretty much everything of her bowling tactic in the book in the past torment to torture him and even take advantage whenever he had gotten on her nerves. but Timmy had always managed to overcome it over time. Whenever he could prove it to his parents, Vicky had pretty much exhausted every tactic in the book. So she couldn't figure out how to get the revenge on Timmy. However, that had changed when Vicky got the news from Mr. and Mrs. Turner that his appendix was going to be needing to be removed surgically. And then she got the perfect idea for her revenge. It would be the ultimate form of real retaliation against Timmy for allowing Vicky and her friends to suffer from the wheels of the steamroller. Vicky had heard real horror stories about patients waking up in the surgery, suffering psychological damage due to the experience of witnessing their own surgery, but in a completely different, unable to move, feel anything, or even speak due to the paralytic drugs being pumped into their systems, various medical machinery. From what Vicky's also learned, she had also discovered in some cases the patients actually experienced some extreme pain from the surgical procedures being done on them, due to the painkillers wearing off once they awoke from the surgery table. For the last several days, Vicky had poured all of her research out to surgically anesthetics, ended up failing during the surgery, and everything that had to do with it, such as medications, were administered to ensure the patient stayed while knocked out. What type of medical machinery was used to alert the surgeons in that case if the patient wakes up? And what type of medications that were used to ensure the patients don't feel anything in case they do wake up in surgery? Eventually, Vicky had learned and figured out that the machines were used for those procedures. What medications did the surgeons administered, and then began to form the possibility of the darkest, twisted, most evil revenge plan she had ever enacted in her life. Vicky's plan was to enter the surgery room and disguise as a nurse and sabotage the machines so that the administrator of the drugs needed to keep Timmy fully sedated throughout his surgery, as well as the machines, as well as to alert the other surgeons once Timmy woke up. Once he's awake, he'd be informed to watch his own surgery unfold right before his very eyes, and it would be a very sight that would scar his mind for life. Vicky also knew that the helpless, even more alert than the doctors were, once he awake from the paralytic drugs in his system, that would prevent him from moving or even speaking. He'd felt no pain since Vicky had figured out the other drugs being fed into his body would soon enough be completely eliminated from the pain surgery that she had remembered, reading some research articles online that is rare for patients to experience this pain from surgery. So Vicky simply assumed that Timmy wouldn't feel anything from the surgical procedure. That little twerp will rue the day that they ever mess with me, Vicky hissed, as she made her way into the surgery room. No one makes a fool out of me and gets away with it. That little snot will soon learn how foolish he was to let me suffer such a horrid fate that day. Once he wakes up in here, he'll be forced to watch his own guts getting ripped out, and his mind will be scarred for life. At least he won't feel any pain since I'm feeling generous enough to not let him go that far. Vicky looked around and found the machine where the where the knockout gas to Timmy to put him to sleep was. Then, behind it, there were two small anesthetic gas tanks attached to the back, containing the knockout gas. Vicky disconnected them and released some of the gas out of them, eventually leaving them only half full. Then hooked them back up to the machine. Vicky then pulled out a small super magnet, size of a pinky nail, of her pocket to attach them to the small dial showing how much gas that there was inside the tanks. She then placed a position where it would magnetically hold the metal needle in place to make it look like the tanks were full. Then in reality, they were barely now full. Vicky then had researched up towards the machine that would alert the surgeons if the patient woke up during surgery and switched to a few wire plugs around it. Wiring the settings and functions, the machine was now sabotaged. It would soon continue to operate, but with only one twist. It would not sound the alarm if the knockout gas suddenly wore off and the patient woke up. The last thing Vicky did before leaving was to flip a few switches on the heart monitor, effectively sabotaging it, to ensure that Timmy's changing heart rate wouldn't be noticeable. Ha 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 ha. That little twerp will wake up shortly after his surgery begins, and he'll be forced to watch the show without being able to do anything. He won't feel any pain, but seeing his own guts being ripped apart will scar his mind for life. Maybe that will teach him not to mess with me again, Vicky sneered as she turned down to head out of the surgery room. As she headed back to the locker room, Vicky heard movement down the hall, so she quickly rushed into the locker rooms and closed the doors just as soon as a group of doctors and nurses wheeling out of the hospital bed towards the surgery room. Timmy was on the bed now, with his parents following him behind. Vicky quickly changed back into her normal clothing as she heard the doors of the surgery room opening outside. Mr. and Mrs. Turner had stopped just outside the surgery room as Timmy was wheeled inside.